Thanks for coming, everyone. Thank you. So, the difficult part. My name is Thanassis Pozantzis, and that's the short version. The actual version is Athanasios, which means immortal in ancient Greek. Okay? So, I plan to live for many years and entertain you. So, you can find me as Noseman. If you Google Noseman, I come up first. And I'm a Cinema 4D fanboy. So, regardless of what I tell you today, it may not be true, but it's going to be about Cinema 4D. So, some people say that I know everything there is about Cinema 4D, when actually I know everything about generally everything. So if you have any questions, you need any advice, any life coaching, come and ask me. And today we'll talk about how to use Photoshop Smart Layers to create resolution-independent textures inside Cinema 4D. And maybe a few other things on the side. And let me explain what exactly we're going to do now. If anyone does any design, like packaging or anything that uses Illustrator files, we know that Illustrator vector files are resolution independent. We can scale them up, scale them down without losing any resolution. Now, many times, when we have very high resolution renders to produce in Cinema 4D, we have to create textures that have very high resolutions derived from Adobe Illustrator. And the problem with that is that for example, in my experience when I used to do a lot of packaging in the UK, I had textures which were 10,000 pixels by 15,000 pixels, and that was only one of the 8 colors on packaging. So I used 8 of those. And if you use the very high resolution textures, those textures need to be loaded in your RAM all the time, and it takes some time when you want to do certain changes and so forth. So the method I'm going to introduce today allows you to work with a low-resolution proxy and then scale this up in Photoshop, and automatically it will stay linked to Cinema 4D, and you won't actually need to do anything else. You're going to use the same file, just change the resolution in Photoshop and reload it in Cinema 4D, and then you have an extremely high-resolution texture. So follow me on Twitter, @NosemanGR. I do not tweet, so you will enjoy the silence of my non-tweets. But follow me nevertheless, because I'm a very vain person. And this is pretty much my presentation. Thank you. So, amongst other things, what we're going to see is we're going to be able to change a profile of a displacement using a spline and all that, but that's for the end of it. We are going to use this logo of this fabulous company that makes this great 3D product. And this is just a simple artwork. So, in order to begin our method, I'm going to show you the way most people do it, which is wrong, okay? Just to get you... Actually, I could do this presentation in 10 minutes, but you know how a show has to go on, like a soap opera. You have to see half of the previous episode in the next episode to move on. So normally what we would do, we'll take this file and save it. I'm going to go on my... let's go on the desktop. And name this... Always put meaningful names when you're saving things so you know exactly what you're doing. And I'm going to name this Original Maxon Logo. Okay, so this is the process most people do. And then you're going to go to Photoshop, and you're going to open this. So go to this very properly named folder, and we're going to load the resolution we want. So currently, I'm going to keep it quite low. So I'm going to make this 100 pixels per inch. 26 inches, that's a bit too much. I'm going to make this 15. There you go. So we have this Maxon logo. And what I want to do is use this in my bump or my displacement. So let me show you a few wrong things to do. I'm going to save this in this folder. I'm going to put it in a text folder because that's the way we like to do things here. And I'm just going to save it as it is. So this is not a vector image. This is just a Photoshop pixel file. Bitmap file. Then I'm going to go to Cinema 4D, create a new scene, and I'm going to create a plane. Whoops, that's a capsule, sorry. And let's just find out the resolution. I just want to make it 15 by, so it's 84.4. So I'm going to show you exactly what I'm doing here. Let me just fix my layout. There you go. So 150 by 84.4. The only reason I'm doing this is because I just want my texture to fit exactly on my plane without having to do anything else. So this is just a utility thing I'm doing. And then I'm going to create a texture. And I'm going to go, let's go to the bump channel. No, let's go to the displacement channel directly. And in the displacement channel, I'm going to save my file in the same folder here. Call this 01. And let's load that texture. So go to the folder, and let's load this in. Good. Drag it here. Render. And we have all these pixelized polygons because we haven't used the subdivision. Now you can see that we have this displacement. So let's start solving a few problems. Let's start learning a few things. If we want to preview our displacements in Cinema 4D, there are a couple of ways to do it. Depending on our graphics card's abilities, we can go and turn on the tessellation. But what I prefer to do, because I'm kind of old school, I use a displacer. The displacer is a deformer. And in the displacer, you can put a material, and it will be used to displace your geometry. And if you're wondering what kind of geometry we have, we can switch on the line so we can see what's going on around here. And in the shading, I'm going to load the same bitmap, just in case you know any bitmaps you've loaded in Cinema 4D, they're always available in that bitmap tab. And I'm going to go here and make this 200 by 200, and already even more, 500 by 500. So now we have this view of how our displacement is going to look by using this deformer. Okay, this is a 2014 Mac, by the way, MacBook Pro. So you can see that the resource, if you have a powerful computer, you can go even higher. So already we're seeing several problems with this. Number one problem, it's very sharp. So what we normally do when we want to change that sharpness, we go into our image and we add some sort of Gaussian blur. Okay, I think it's too much. Let me add a bit less. So Gaussian blur. My mouse is acting up. That's funny. So, yep. Sorry about that. Just going to switch. Yeah. Of all the things that can go wrong, my mouse will break down. So, blur and Gaussian blur. And let's make this 5. So now I'm going to save this, go here, go to my material, the one I've used, and just click on it and say reload image. So now you can see that by adding that blurriness, we're kind of smoothing out our edges. And the next thing I'm going to do is go up and what do I want to do here? I'm going to change the amount and change this to intensity. Just in case you didn't know, intensity is centered. And intensity, the difference is when it's centered, then 50 gray is the waterline, white is up, and black is down. But if it's at intensity, then black is the waterline, and white is all the way up to this value. So intensity, and you can see that we have an image which is indented. So all is nice and dandy at this point. We like this displacement. So let's go and add some color. So I'm going to go back to my Photoshop file. I'm going to undo a couple of times, go back to this, save it as a separate file. Let's call this color, or 1. And then I'm going to use this as a mask to mask that thing out. Now, the reason it's this funny is because the displacement of the render is added to the displacement of the displaced deformer. So I just need to turn this off. Let's go to the color, and let's load the original Maxon. Sorry, the color 1. There you go. So another little tip, if you want to see your textures clearer in the viewport, just go to your material editor and change default to no scaling. And no scaling is actually going to bring the whole texture in at its full resolution. If you want to choose another resolution, just go and choose one from here. But that's the best way to view it. And this is real time over here. Good. So I kind of like this, but this is at a very particular resolution. If I go here and I render this, you can see now I have this pixelation. This is an actual render. So now if I want to create a high resolution texture of what we see here, I need to go all the way back, open the same Illustrator file from Photoshop, and create the same thing in a higher resolution. So how do we go around this so that we have the same one Photoshop file that contains the data in a scalable way? So what we're going to do is go to Illustrator, and mind you, there's a little detail. You can see I have a transparent rectangle right at my edges. The reason I do this is that the way Photoshop and Illustrator works is that if I just select this and copy it and paste it, just the M. Photoshop is only going to create space for that M. I want Photoshop to be aware of my canvas here. And the way to bring the canvas in Photoshop by copy-paste, the canvas from Illustrator to Photoshop, I need an object around here. So you just make a rectangle and make it transparent. The other thing you must always remember when you're using data channels for bump and all that is always use RGB. Most people, because they use Illustrator for print, the document mode is CMYK, and the blacks are not blacks. So they're gray, and you're never going to achieve the accuracy you want. So make sure the color mode is RGB, and your colorization, when you select all this, let me select everything and deselect this, it's in RGB color, and now it's black. That is the way you need to work. So I'm going to select all, Command or Control C if you have a PC, and go to Photoshop, and we're going to create a new file, which automatically gives us the aspect ratio of the items in our clipboard, and I'm going to paste this in here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to click Smart Object. Who doesn't know what smart objects are in Photoshop? Who doesn't know? If you don't raise your hand, I'm going to ask you, and you have to tell me. You all know what smart objects are. Good. Going to save some time here. So, and now we have the same Maxon logo, but this is resolution independent. So this is 1920 by 1080. And you can see that it's very sharp. If I turn this into, I don't know, 400%, and wait a few minutes, good, you can still see we have the full resolution, because that's what a smart object does. So I'm going to undo, go back to my low resolution. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use this resolution to create my artwork, and then I'm going to use the scaling to up the resolution without losing anything. But there are a few caveats, and let's check them out. So, repeating the previous experiment. Cinema 4D can read Photoshop layers. We can actually go in the layer, in the file structure, and we will see in Cinema 4D the layered structure here. And we can select a layer, the layer alpha, the alpha channel, and all sorts of other things. And that is very convenient, and I'll tell you why. Let's call this color. And it's nice and sharp. Now, always name your layers with unique names, because the way Cinema 4D reads the Photoshop file and the layer structure is by name, not by hierarchy. So all your layers need to have different names, and just put very descriptive names that will help you. Not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, for example. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to create a copy of this. If I just do this, then both these layers are referencing the same Illustrator file. So when I change one, the other is going to change as well. We can use that in our advantage, okay? But if I want to create one which is slightly different, then what you do, you actually go to your layer and you say Smart Objects, New Smart Object via Copy. This is going to create something that seems to be the same, but it references a different vector file. So if I go and change this, double-click, opens Illustrator, select this, make it red, save, go to Photoshop, you'll see these two are red, but the one I created from the menu is not red. So we can use this in our advantage as well. The good thing about this whole system is that I can undo here, and it does everything all the way back to Illustrator, which I find it pretty magical. So I'm going to delete this one, which I don't want. And remember, we had one which was blurry and one which was sharp. So what I'm going to do in this case is the following thing. I'm going to delete this, and make a copy of this. And I'm going to call the top one Bump. Okay? And what I'm going to do to this bump is the following thing. I'm going to turn this off and go to the bump and add my Gaussian blur. Okay? And it's a smart filter. I'm just going to get rid of that. I just don't like it. And basically, I have a version which is blurry and a version which is the blurry one and the other one. Okay? And everything is fine. I'm just going to save this file. So Untitled, and this is correct file. Okay? So press OK. Let's go to Cinema 4D. And let's now replace these ones with the new one. So first of all, let's go back here. let's go to our material. Let's go to the color. And what I'm going to do is load up our correct file, OK. If I click on the correct file, OK, you will see this nice little button which says Select. Make sure that it's over here. Click on Select, and we can see the structure of our layers. And we can see some options. The layer itself, the layer alpha, which means the transparency of that layer, the layer mask, if there's a layer mask next to it, and alpha channels are going to appear if there are any alpha channels there. So what do I want? I want the color layer alpha, and which is very popular with Maxon. They make the icons very small, and that's to create character. It helps you focus, okay? If it was a big preview, you wouldn't focus, okay? Yeah, put a note. Please note that, yes. Thank you very much. So yeah, especially for blind people like me, you need to get me one of these, you know, so I can work properly. Anyway, so I'm going to press OK, and you will see that we get the alpha channel. It's inverted, of course, because that's how the alpha channel is presented. There's a way to change this. I can go and change, I think it's the white point and the black point. Yeah. Or there are other things we can do, which I'm going to show you right now. Just going to mix things up. With this in the slot, I'm going to select a filter shader. And the filter shader allows us to do some color correction on anything we have in there. It could be a procedural shader, it can be an image, it can be anything you want. And yeah, we've got all sorts of things here. And one of these things is I can go, I think we don't have an invert, do we? I can go to this, and I think I can select these. I can right-click and say, oops, I think I'm in zoom mode, that's why. Flip vertical. There you go. So we have instant color correction. And we can do gamma corrections and all that. Anyway, this is just to show what you can do. We're going to use this in a minute. I'm going to undo a few times and go back to the original version. Another way to do it is place it into a layer shader. The layer shader has the following advantage. If you right-click on the name of the layer, it allows you to invert the image. So that's another way. Depending on what you're doing, you can choose either or. Which is, now it's all good. Let me go to the Displacer and change my shading to the new file, which is the correct file. Do exactly the same process. Click on this, go to Select, select the bump, and say Layer Alpha, click OK, and you will see now that we have our bump, which is reversed, and we can do exactly the same process. I can do it here because I'm too lazy to do 3 more clicks. And now the advantage of this is that if I go very close and I see the pixels, I can go to Photoshop. I can press Command, Alt, and I, and triple the resolution. Press OK, save. Oh, that was quick. Save. Oh, yeah. And go back to Cinema 4D, and all you have to do, find your texture anywhere in one place and click Reload Image. It will reload every instance of this image and keep all the relationships. Press R, and now you can see that we have better resolution. What you see here is because our plane needs more subdivision. So just ignore that for now. Let's turn this off, and just pay attention to the material, which is now sharp. So the basis of the technique is to use the smart layers. But there's a caveat. You're not going yet. So here's the problem. Did you realize that my bump shrunk? The bump became smaller. And the reason is that smart filters don't scale with changing resolution. They stay numerically the same, the pixel amount. So how do we remedy that? Bad Photoshop, bad Photoshop. No, Photoshop is good. They can't hear us from Adobe, can they? No. There you go. I'm going to undo a few times and see. There we go. And redo. Oh, there you go. So we're back to our original 1920 by 1080. So what you can do, which is very simple, we are going to re-smart the same layer. So I'm going to go here and create a smart layer. And where's that? It's right-click and create smart layer. No, not this one. Smart layer. Smart layer. Where is it? Oh, I forgot what it is. I was doing it this morning. So if anyone, yeah, no, smart object, convert smart object, there you go. So convert to smart object. So now we have a smart object in a smart object. But because now it's locked, the effect is not outside, then if we scale this up and make it like 400%, you will see that the bump is going to scale exactly as we want it. So we've solved that problem. So by using these nested smart objects, you can actually create a structure with your textures that can, have a lot of flexibility. And in this case, we have the following advantage. Because both of these smart objects are based on the same vector, if Maxon changed its name to Maxon, and I need to save this, of course. It didn't work because it was nested. Too bad. When it nests, it doesn't work. Sorry, my bad. You just do it at 2 files, or you copy-paste. So now, this works. And if I go to my Cinema 4D and go in any of the instances of the material, I'm going to go here, click on this, and reload the image. Reload the image. Did I save? I didn't save. Sorry, guys. Forgot to save. Reload image. There you go. And you can see that it works properly. OK, so this is one way of doing things. Now there's another way. The problem with the method we've used, we'll go to Illustrator. Let me undo this. I think did I screw up my file? No, I didn't. What I'm going to do is go here. See, I screwed it up, but thanks to copy and paste, haha. There you go. Go here, double click. It's like 4 clicks, all right? Don't complain. Oh, that's odd. Save. Yep. Photoshop. There you go. Save. There you go. So everything is in place. So the problem we have here is that our blurriness begins halfway of where our sharp texture is. So you can see the sharpness is here, and the blurriness goes in and out. What if I want that bump to start from the edge of my logo? Okay, I want it to start from here and go outside. So in that case, of course, you can do some Photoshop cooking. There's a very simple way to do that. And we just copy the name. I'm going to delete this, make a copy of this, and I'm going to add an outer glow, which is a procedural effect. Now, the outer glow, you can see it begins from where the object ends. And, we can make it a bit bigger. There you go. Not bad. I like this. You can choose linear or whatever. Blend mode, make sure it's normal. Make sure it's a black color that fades to transparent or to white. You do OK. But because this has transparency, the way smart layers and effects work in Photoshop, I command-clicked on that. This is the mask. So Photoshop does not understand the masking of the effects. What does this mean? All we have to do is redo the smart object thing. So just go here and turn this into a smart object. So convert to smart object. See, I found it now. Excellent. And on top of this, I'm going to add a very small Gaussian blur, just to smooth out things. I'm going to do it later on so you can see exactly what happens. We'll double-click here and paste the name, because we need the same naming structure. OK? And let me see what else I can do. Oh, and I'm going to double-click on this. I'm going to put a white background on this. So the easiest way to do that is change your canvas size to something much larger. So let's say 140. Why is it 140 inches? Anyway, so let me just reset this. 100 by 50. See what happens. Yeah, I just need a bigger canvas size. So canvas size, 120 by 70. Good. I'm going to create a white background, new fill layer, solid color, and call this background. Make sure it's white. Drag it to the bottom. Get rid of the mask. Save this. Close it. There you go. So it's in place now. Good. So we have our outer object and our blurriness. Save this. And let's go to Cinema 4D and reload this image. Let's render, and let's go and see what happens in this case. I'm going to go to my Displacer and make sure that we have the right image selected. Yes, the reason we see black is that before we used the layer alpha. But because now I've got a white background, there is no alpha. So I just need to use the layer color. As simple as that. So look at this now. Now I've got a linear beveling that ends exactly where I wanted to end. Which, you know, it caters for some good effects here, okay? Render. Yeah, there's some with the update. I think it's my very old graphics card. I think it's got only 1 or 2 gigabytes. Anyway, so as you can see, we have this linear bump. Now, if this is what you want, then you're fine. But maybe you don't want it linear. Maybe you want it to be kind of rounded. So the way to do this is pretty simple. First of all, I just want to make this a bit sweeter. So I'm going to go to this Maxon bump, and I'm going to add a very small blurriness, Gaussian blur, of 5. And this is going to sweet out any rough spots. Save this, go here, and just reload the image. And you'll see immediately we lost those artifacts because now it's nice and smooth. And I'm going to increase my displacer ever so slightly, like double it, so I can see better. OK, so how do we change that shape now? OK, let's remember what we did. We used a linear gradient from the effect. It was a linear. You can control how that effect is by using those little splines. But I want to do it here. I want to control it. So the way to do it is you go to the displacer, you go to your shading, and you add your filter. So let's go to the filter. There it is. Click on this. And now move this all the way up. And underneath the main settings, we have the Gradiation Curves, which allow us to do RGB and R separate B and separate R, G, and B corrections. I'm going to enable it. And let's do this. I'm going to shift-click and select both these, right-click here, and let's go to Point Type and do an easy ease. And you can see something happened. Drag 1 and press Command to keep it constrained. And you will see that the shape changes. Now, I want it bigger. So let's save this file. Let's go to Photoshop. Let's find that effect. Double-click here. Double-click on the outline and say, I want this to be 150. Save this. Close it. Save this. Go to Cinema 4D. Click on this and say Reload Image. And pop, bigger. So like 7 clicks to do that. And again, we can go inside these curves and start playing around. Command-click to add a point. Command-click to add another point. Command-click to add another point. And now we can create any type of displacement we want just by changing the graph we have there. And there's the way it corresponds is, yeah, as you can see, the shape goes upwards. It's this shape here. So you have a very good visual representation of what your outcome is going to be like. Now, there are a few things to keep into consideration when you're using these kind of bumps and displacements. And because these are data channels, okay, it's not color, it's just a value from 0 to 100%, which is the blackness or the whiteness, depending on which side you view it from. If you're using an 8-bit typical grayscale, like the one we're using here, you may end up having some stepping. So I'm going to go to the displacer. I'm going to copy this shader and turn this off. Go to my displacement here, and I'm going to paste that shader. And I'm going to render just with intensity. May put this 2 centimeters as it was, and render this and see what kind of artifacts we have, if any. We will see some artifacts. Now, what it's doing, it's subdividing 4 times the geometry we already had, okay? And that was like 300 by 300 polygons, which is 90,000. And you double that 4 times. That's a lot. There you go. So look at these artifacts here. Those artifacts you see are a result of our 8-bit gradation we have in Photoshop. How do we fix that? Panic. Oh. You go to Photoshop, and you switch your image to 16 bits. That's easy. That's too easy, though. I need to put some more drama in that.
Just 1 click?
Yeah. It's 1.5 clicks. And a drag. All right, and a drag. So it takes a bit more to save, and it takes a bit more space. But the result is quite impressive, because if you reload the image and you render again, so preparing displacement. So how much was it again? We said 300 by 300, 90,000 times 2, 180,000 times 2, 60 times 2. That's a lot of times 2s. Smooth as butter. And that's because we changed it to 16-bit. So whenever you're using Photoshop files to create anything that's data-driven, like displacements, like bumps, and all that, whenever you have these artifacts, always go, you don't need to go 32-bit. That's a bit too much. The files are huge. But you can go safely to 16-bit and have this smooth thing. Now, in some cases, you may be able to get away with that little blurriness. But because Photoshop adds a bit of graininess because we have banding and all that, the best way is to go 16-bit. And although your file is going to be a bit bigger, it is worth when you're doing final renders. So this is the render with one file with the layers we have. And go closer here and see what our resolution is like. There we go. Let's go here. Let's render this and wait like a few seconds. Oh, good. I'm going to be half an hour earlier. I always have things to say. Don't worry. I'll keep you entertained. Probably forgot half the things I wanted to tell you. So, oh yeah, it's up. Duh. So let me just change my plane to something like 200 by 200. I think it's going to be enough. Okay, let's render this. It's going to be much, much faster now. There you go. Oh, we got good resolution here. So if you wanted to work at a lower resolution, you just go here. We're currently at 7,680 by 4,320. You can make this like 20%. And because everything is procedural, the file is going to save faster. Everything is going to be much faster. Reload this file, render again, and again in a few seconds, you're going to get the same thing, but good enough for a preview render. Now, when it comes to the bumps and all that, you won't see such a huge difference. But when it comes to the actual color materials, color textures, that's where you're going to see differences. Okay? So for this round, do we have any questions? Yes, please.
Vector files in Photoshop, but is it also possible to work with Illustrator files, so you don't have the pixelation?
Okay, the question was, instead of going through Photoshop, can we actually do that directly with Illustrator files? No. No. Cinema 4D supports Illustrator files as vector splines, so you can use them for modeling. And if you have the CV Art Smart plugin from Cineversity, you can do quite a lot of things, but you cannot use them as textures. It would be nice, though. Yeah, it would be nice, though. Okay, who else is there? It would be nice. Whatever. Any other questions? That was a simple one to answer. Okay, so let me see what I have here. I'm sure I'm can show you some interesting stuff. Blah, 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 blah. 16-bit, we told about that. Oh, okay. So a lot of people wonder if we have any type of blurring inside Cinema 4D. And the answer is kind of. And whenever you if you go up and you see the main icon, over here we have what it's called a blur offset and a blur scale. Now, if we go to blur scale and put something like 5%, let's see what's going to happen. It's going to add a bit of blurriness to that material. You can see it adds a bit of blurriness. You can play around with these numbers. I don't know exactly what they're going to do. I'm going to get rid of my displacement for now so that we can just render things. So let's go. Ooh, that's a bit too much, isn't it? So 0, and 2%. And this will provide us with a slight amount of blurriness. Now, when it's a color image, it doesn't really, I would say it's not very helpful. But if it's a channel, a data channel, like a bump or something, by adding a bit of blurriness in the blur scale, you may be able to smooth it out if it's some sort of noise and so forth. So that is something you may choose to use. When you're using an image in here, you can go and select different types of sampling. But currently, we're using a layer shader and all sorts of other things, which it doesn't apply in that case. So let me read further down. If any questions come up, just raise your hands. So, OK. Let me show you something slightly interesting. Because this method is so procedural, we can do a lot of experiments. For example, what if I wanted to create kind of an indent inside as well? So you can add more of these effects. So I'm going to create an inner glow and see what comes out of this. What did I do? There you go. Let's try again. Make this bigger. Go here and say inner glow. Oh, come on. Yeah. I have to double click and go in this one. Thank you very much. So inner glow. That's a bit better. And the inner glow, I want it to be white to black, I guess. Let's see if it's white color, what's going to happen. Inner glow. Opacity normal. It's white. White to black. Yeah, the preview. Thank you very much. Jonas. So let's zoom in here. Let's make this bigger. OK, so I don't want this. I want the opposite, basically. So I'm going to go click on this and say black to white. So now you can see we're creating the opposite thing. And yep, let's just leave it as it is. These are the curves I was talking about. If you click on this, you have preset curves. By using the linear one I'm using, it actually helps you change that curve inside Cinema 4D. It makes it faster, more iterations inside the program. If you want one of these ready-made ones, just knock yourselves out. So yeah, this, and let's save, and let's close this. And let's save this. There you go, correct file. And let's go here, and let's reload this image. And what should happen, in theory, is that in the displacement, we've got this one loaded. So now, I'm going to get rid of the material in here, just so that we can see only the displacement. And it should be fun. There you go. So just by adding an effect and not touching anything else, we are creating a very interesting displacement. And we can use the same material in our Displacer deformer to create a real-time thing we can see and control and art direct, and then just copy and paste it in displacement, use the same values, and have our final render over there. So up to this point, who learned one thing today? Oh, so you didn't learn anything today, right? No? OK. Who learned two things today? OK. 5 things. Oh, I'm very good. OK. So any questions on this? So we can kind of move forward? Yes, please. Oh, yeah. Aha.
Microphone, please.
Microphone, please. Microphone, please. OK, thank you.
All right. Just a quick question.
Yes.
On the left, you see there's some anti-aliasing, or what is that of the
Yeah,
image?
I don't have anti-aliasing on.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, because I'm too lazy to click 3 times.
Okay.
Because, look, click,
on the left side, you do
click,
have it.
click, like, are you kidding me? What am I doing, working for you? There you go, so everything's gone.
Ah, yeah, okay.
Are you happy now?
Yeah.
Right, any more difficult questions, please? Nothing? Okay, let's see what else we can say today. So yeah, the effects in Photoshop and your smart layers nested in smart layers in Illustrator are your best friends. And you can keep everything in one simple file. So let's see, yeah, effects, no scale, image size, Smart layer down the spot. Yep. Linearly, filter shader. Ooh, that was quick. Yeah. So I've pretty much gone through everything I want to show. And so let's see something else. We have about 10, 15, 20 minutes. We can scale it. So it's request time, okay? What would you like to see? If I feel I'm not confident, I'm just not going to do it. So what would you like to see? Come on. I'm sure you want to learn something. Mark? You know everything. Yeah, you're good. Sophia? No? You'll think of something. Okay.
Well, maybe show some MoGraph stuff again.
I'll show some MoGraph stuff again. Let me see what I didn't show yesterday and add a bit of stuff. You know, so yesterday I kind of left quite a few things without saying this. So where were we yesterday? Blending controls, tags, and special MoGraph objects. And all right, let's. One of our new tools is the Voronoi fracture object. And what I'd like to introduce, so from this point onwards, it's a continuation of yesterday's lesson, okay? So when we create things using our standard MoGraph tools, for example, a cloner or a matrix and so forth, immediately the items that are generated, so for example, our cubes, when they're generated within the MoGraph context. That is sort of the terminology, which means that MoGraph assigns all the data needed for these to work inside MoGraph. But in Cinema 4D, we have all sorts of other things. We have splines, we have freestanding objects, and we should be able to use these freestanding objects within the MoGraph context. And the way to do that is by using things like, for example, not our Voronoi fracture, but the old fracture generator. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to go here, I'm going to create a grid array, do my typical thing here, and make it editable. So now I have these 100 cubes here. But I want to control them using effectors. So how do I do that? By the way, just to let you know, when a cloner attaches color, the color you see here in the cloner, the way it's stored on the cubes, because you can see the cubes are white now, although they're not MoGraph elements, that color is stored in the basic display color. Okay, just so that you know, if you're wondering, where's that color? It's not a texture, there's no material here, it's the display color. Okay, so you can get rid of that if you select them all and turn that off. So back to our little original question. Go to MoGraph, create a fracture object, and then middle mouse click on a parent to select everything, in case you didn't know that, and command click to deselect that, and drag everything up. And here we are. Let's get rid of this. So once you put any number of objects as children of a fracture object, that brings them in the MoGraph context. Okay? So how do we use this? Number one, and the most important thing, you have these three modes. You have straight, explode segments, and connect. What do they do? You right-click, you go to the help file, and you read about it. Okay? Let's move on. So we're going to use explode segments because it will actually divide. It's simple. The straight takes this as one whole object. When you use explode segments, it will take every piece which is unconnected and make it an object. And if you use explode segments and connect, it will take all the pieces and connect any ones which have adjacent vertices. So now with explode segments, the fracture object has a transform which we can control, what we control with a MoGraph cloner, and we have effectors. So let's go and add some effector here. Let's add a random effector. And there you go. So if I go to random effector and go to the effector tab and turn this to a turbulence and press play, we have this animation of all these objects. So number one way to bring freestanding objects into the MoGraph context is by using a fracture object. Okay. So one of the objects that are within the MoGraph context is the new Voronoi fracture generator. Has anyone used R18 Voronoi fracture generator? Raise of hands, please. Raise hands. Interactivity. Okay. Not many of you have. So again, I'm going to create a cube, my favorite object, make it a child of Voronoi fracture. And we have this fractured cube, okay? And it's very simple to control by means of going here, go to sources, click on point generator, which is basically what these green things are called seeds, because the algorithm used to do this kind of fracturing is a Voronoi algorithm, a Voronoi graph. And what it needs is seeds. Now, this point generator generates points randomly within the object. The amount is whatever you see here. There's a randomness, seed, and so forth. Inside means it's going to be inside the object. But here's the interesting thing. I can increase these and increase the randomness. I can go here and change their position. So I'm going to confine them to 1/10 of my object and create something like this. But I can even create a new distribution source. So I can have one on one side and very thin like that. I can have the other one on the other side and very thin. So I can direct where my pieces are going to be. One is 20, the other is 200. So let me put this 200. And you can see that we have fractures over here, and so forth. You can add as many of those. Another thing you can do is use the same object you're fracturing as the generator. These are all sorts of tricks that people like Derya Ozturk, known as Yader, he kind of did a lot of exploration last year for the new tools. So let me show you a few interesting tricks. Create a sphere. My favorite sphere topology is the icosahedron. Icosi in Greek, as Sophia knows very well, means 20. So it's got 20 sides. Now, these are more than 20, but anyway, who understands geometry? Nobody. I do, I'm just, So what we can do now with by default, this will be what you would see. So these are the fractures. That will be the default. Go and select your sources, delete them, and drag your sphere inside here. Because the topology that we are fracturing and the topology we're using to seed those points is identical, we get very interesting shapes. And now let's take advantage of some R19 fun stuff. Go to the object and let's do a hull only. Hull only means that we don't have depth in our pieces. It's only the surface. And of course, as Glenn and many others have shown, you can invert this. Let's make this 3. And you have a weird structure here. And you can even add thickness. And this is still a procedural object. And because it's procedural, that means we can do whatever we want. We can add a deformer. Deform it. And wait a few seconds. We go 45. There you go. And this is not editable. This is still procedural. And we can do this with all sorts of weird shapes. Let's apply the same logic with a plane, for example. Let's see what that does. I'm going to get I haven't tried this, but I guess it's going to be fun. Put the plane here, then drag the plane in the sources. Oh, there you go. Look at that. Now we have little squares. So by doing these little experiments with all the new procedural tools that we have, you can just sit there around there, doodle in your idle time instead of reading Twitter or Facebook or doing whatever you do when you procrastinate. And if you need any advice on procrastination, please come to me. I am the master of procrastination. Okay? My presentation, I actually finished it this morning. Well, not this morning, I was procrastinating. It was more close to an hour ago. Anyway, and what I advise everyone is, because of Cinema 4D's very stable nature, it doesn't crash. You can just drag things, and the only thing you can do is go and put a number like, I want 600,000 seeds for my Voronoi fracture, and you're just going to have to wait for like a few minutes or an hour or so. Other than that, it's very rare, especially on Macs. On PCs, I don't know what goes on. I don't care. I don't want to know. Just leave me alone. Experiment. Don't be afraid to try things that are outside the norm. Okay, let's try something. Why don't we, instead of having a plane in here, why don't we just go to the simulate, create a particle emitter. I mean, yeah, we know that this works. And, just, there you go, ready. No keyframes necessary. Just add a particle emitter. And you know something? I can make a copy of this particle emitter and rotate it that way and bring it down and add a second particle emitter. I mean, who cares, right? And now we have a different shape. So there is, you shouldn't limit yourselves by just following certain rules. By breaking the rules, that's the way you're actually going to realize the full potential of the tool. So what else can we do here and break it? Although I'm done with my 50-minute presentation, so I can go home happy. First of all, did you enjoy the presentation? Yes, but you're my friend. You're not supposed to do that. Come on. No one? Come on. There's an ovation. They're like, yeah, great. Good. Yeah, next time put me earlier, please. People are very tired at this time of day. Okay, so I can take questions on anything you like. Tomorrow it's going to be raining. I got that right. Questions? No? No? No one? Okay. So I guess that either you didn't understand anything or you understood everything. Well, thank you very much for coming. I have one more presentation tomorrow, which has to do with some tools that Maxon developers make in their spare time. Because what's wrong with these people is that they go to work early, they work hard, then they go home late, they sleep, and on the weekends they actually code plugins for Cinema 4D. Go figure, okay? Yeah, it's a weird thing. Anyway, so I'm going to show a couple of tools from selection. If you want to see a few these plugins, go to labs.maxon.net, and it's the Maxon Labs, and you'll see they've got a few plugins. I'm going to talk about those tomorrow. Thank you very much for coming and wasting your precious time with me. And feel free, if you find me anywhere, just stop me and ask me any question you want. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much.